Hey there, how you doing?
Good.
Good.
Now let me make you bigger. All
How's
right.
all right, hi guys. How's everybody?
Fantastic. So we was
Good.
just listening into the first part of your story. It's absolutely
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, crazy. It was I the best way I can describe it is a nightmare. It's like it was like you were watching a train wreck that was going to happen. You couldn't stop it. You knew the train wreck was coming, but
Yeah.
nothing was going to stop it. Yeah, it was a really tough time in our lives. We had just finally decided to have a child, and it was supposed to be an exciting time, and it ended up being a nightmare, so but man, it's taught us a lot. It's taught us a whole lot. So about where you left off in that story, I mean, I can fill in the gaps and then tell you what we've been up to since. But I
Yeah.
ended up, I we had that civil trial. I had to move out of the home, and then we had a criminal trial next, and that lasted 2 weeks. We called several experts again. We had a neurologist, a radiologist. We even had two child abuse pediatricians who testified for us, saying that they would never diagnose my daughter with shaken baby syndrome based off of all of her medical records that were ignored, right? Um, and the prosecutor just kept painting all of our experts as hired guns. She just kept saying, "How much are you being paid to be here today?" And it was like, you're pulling an expert neurologist, an expert radiologist, an expert retinal doctor away from their practice. Of course, they have to be paid, right? It's just how it works. That's how the world works. But she would say that, and then she would say, "Did you treat this child bedside?" "No, I reviewed the medical records." So then they would get up and they would, have to. We had to use really complex it was complex medical testimony, right? And you could just see the jurors' eyes glazed over in the jury box. I could tell we were losing them. Like they just, it was. I even saw
Over
a
their
couple.
heads, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, and I even saw a couple of them literally falling asleep. They would nod off in the jury box, and the prosecutor just kept going with this emotional argument, and we had to combat that with facts and science, and but she just kept saying, "Something happened to this baby. Something happened to this baby. You must err on the side of caution. You must convict," right? And you know we got to jury deliberations, and they deliberated for 3 days. And I mean, they kept coming back with questions. We could tell they were struggling. Um, but finally, they came back with a guilty verdict. I was facing 10 years in prison. Um, so I was out on bond still awaiting sentencing. And during that time, my wife and daughter had to flee to Colorado and stay with some of my family there because CPS in the state was still acting like they had jurisdiction. They would just try to enter the home, and they didn't have any jurisdiction over the two of them anymore. So my wife couldn't even be there for my sentencing. She was literally in hiding at this point. Her attorney said, leave the state, So it was a really tough time. The day of my sentencing, at the time when all this happened, I was an airline pilot. And so a bunch of my pilot brothers showed up to sentencing in full uniform at the court. I didn't even know they were coming. A lot of guys I'd flown with over the years. And I said, "What are you guys doing here?" They said, we want this judge to know who she's sentencing today. We know who you are. We've been with you. We've watched you operate airplanes safely. We watched you handle people with care, and we know that this isn't in your character, so we're here for you today. I had supporters that were lining the sidewalks with signs protesting outside the courthouse, and so the judge ended up with, there were lots of letters of support to me from the community and all that, and I didn't have a record. So she took what was called a downward departure in my sentencing. the polygraphs I passed weren't admissible in court, but she knew about them, right? And she knew about a lot of other stuff that wasn't allowed into the trial due to court rules, stuff like that. So she sentenced me to the lightest sentence possible. She gave me 1 year and 3 years probation. So they led me away that day in handcuffs, and I went in to start serving out my sentence. Day two in there, the Michigan Innocence Clinic, the University of Michigan Innocence Clinic showed up. I didn't know they were coming, a couple of lawyers. And they said, hey, we've been following your case, and we want to take your case pro bono on direct appeal, which meant they wanted to handle my appeal for free. And I was just like, where do I sign? Because we had just spent $300,000 that we didn't have, like 2 trials, all these experts. I mean, we came up with the first $50,000. We drained our 401ks, right? We both had careers, but we weren't rich people. I mean, we couldn't just come up with 300 grand. They took on my appeal and started fighting my appeal. Long story short, that took 10 years. We were 7 years into it, and we had exhausted all of our appeals, and it just looked like, wow, I don't know what the next step is, right? And in Michigan formed what's called a Conviction Integrity Unit. The Attorney General's office in the state of Michigan formed the Conviction Integrity Unit, and they looked at the case. They had the case for another 3 years, but they looked at all the evidence. They looked at the changing science. They looked at my daughter's medical records, all that stuff, right? And they came back with the motion to exonerate and brought that to the judge, and the judge signed it, and I was exonerated in November of 2024.
So how long did it actually take for that to happen?
Over 10 years. It took about 11 years. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, it took a long time. That she gave you that 10-year sentence, and you would have been sitting there that entire time. Yeah. What happens to so many people. Right. And while I was incarcerated, I was still facing a parental rights trial because CPS was still moving full speed ahead, trying to terminate my parental rights. And this same judge, we had a parental rights trial. She restored my parental rights, and which meant when I was released, they would be bound to put us through what's called a family reunification plan, right? And reunite us as a family. Because at this point, I had lost 2 years with my daughter by the time all this was done. So she was 2 at that point. And that's the biggest rub, you don't get that time back. I was able to handle everything else, but the time they steal from you is the hardest, You never get that back. And not only time stolen from my daughter and I, but time stolen from my wife and I, the joys of parenting at that age together, the experiences that they stole so much. But I'm just grateful that I could be exonerated. It happens so rarely. It's so tough to overturn a conviction once you're convicted, even if the evidence is so in your favor. The courts look at it like, well, were all the court rules followed? They don't really care if you're innocent. No, they just care what the court rules follow. The rules, exactly. Yeah, once you're convicted, that's it. Yeah. So it's a miracle just to get exonerated, right? But since then, it's been pretty interesting. A week or so after I was exonerated, Robert Robertson in Texas, he's on Texas D row. Okay. Yep. And accused of the same thing, shaken baby syndrome. His daughter, Nikki, passed away at the age of 2, and they charged him with capital murder, right? So, sorry, I'm trying to follow all TikTok's rules, guys. We love the TikTok shop, right? Anyways. He's fighting his case, and the Innocent Project has his case. Yep. Yeah, I work with his legal team. What ended up happening is I got a phone call from a Texas legislator down at the Capitol. Their chief of staff called me and said, "Hey, we understand that you're an exonerated man. You live here in Texas, and you're exonerated as shaken baby." And yes, and they said, "We got a man down here who's fighting for his life, and we just subpoenaed him to come and testify before our criminal jurisprudence committee because we want to hear from him. We feel like there's potentially evidence that hasn't been heard in this case." But the problem is our attorney general in Texas, Ken Paxton, had blocked him from being able to attend the hearing, even though he legally should have been able to be there.
And why
So,
was he able to step in like that? I mean, why? I mean, why did he want to step in? I mean, that's not even usually his job to do.
right.
I
Well,
just thought that was weird.
it's
I mean, I know
interesting
he has the
how,
right
yeah,
to, but it's not
yeah.
usually something they do.
I'll tell you what happened. You can go back, guys, and you can look at it. This is actually pretty entertaining. The Anderson County District Attorney, she's a complete, oh man, I better not, yeah, I'll be careful here, but she's a work, all right? And she got called before this same committee to testify about the facts of the case. And the legislators, a couple of them, were asking her some pretty basic questions, all right? She's gone a couple of times to get death warrant, D warrants signed for this man so that they could unalive him, right? And she doesn't even know the basic facts of the case, right? That you should know as the prosecuting attorney.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something, before this committee, she got dressed down. She got humiliated and they let her have it. They
Good.
dressed her down. And she left that place with her tail between her legs, and she surrendered the case to the Attorney General's office because her career was
On the
in
line, I bet.
question. Oh yeah, oh yeah. So she knew she was in trouble because she was in their crosshairs, you know. Yeah, if you go back on YouTube and just type in Texas Legislators Criminal Jurisprudence Committee, Robert Robertson, you can find all these hearings.
Yeah.
And so anyways, they asked me to come down and testify. I'd never done anything like this. So the reason we moved to Texas is I was able to get back into my career field. I'm a pilot instructor for a major airline here in Texas. I train pilots in the simulators, and so it was awesome to be able to get back into my career. So that I just happened to live in Texas because of my job, right? So I said, yeah, I'll come down. And 2 days prior to the hearing, they called. So I tried to get up to speed. I read the trial transcripts, and everything I read, I could tell just from you get an education in what you're charged with, right? You get a pretty quick education. You have to in figuring out like what are the facts of these cases? What are they trying to say? And I just saw so many similarities. I saw a guy find his daughter who had fallen out of bed, and he rushed her to the emergency room and he wanted help for her. And he got there, and the medical staff flipped the script on him, and it immediately became, you answer the questions. What's happening with her? Well, I'm here for that. That's why I brought her to you, right? That's what they do. They flip the script on you. And they didn't like how he was behaving. They didn't like his demeanor. It turned out Robert had undiagnosed autism, and they didn't like he had a really flat affect. He wasn't responding the way they thought he should be responding. So then the text, hey, yeah, look at that. Here. The Texas, not Texas, but the local police detectives showed up. And of course, the medical staff says, this guy's not acting right. Something's off about this guy. So he's immediately in their crosshairs, right? So anyways, yeah, he was doomed from the start with these folks. And then when I went down there, I just told my story briefly. I read a brief statement, and then I had no idea that I was going to sit there, and I took questions. Like they questioned me for like an hour. It went real well. And I was able to be a help to Robert. And then from that day on, like I met his attorneys. They were there after, and they came up to me and they said, wow, we would love for you to speak if you would do some press conferences with us. Like we're trying to keep this, we're trying to get this guy a new trial. I said, I'll do whatever I can, right? And the more I learned about Robert, the more I knew, like, we have a innocent person on Texas D row, right? And I just started deep diving his case. I started talking to everybody I could talk to. I reviewed his daughter's medical records. I talked to a leading neurologist, a pathologist. I talked to an eye expert. All of them were saying the same thing. They said his daughter, Nikki, had been in and out of the hospital over 80 times since she had been born in her short life. She had apnea, she had asthma, she had breathing issues. At the time of her passing away, she had sepsis, a sepsis infection, double pneumonia. She had been prescribed 2 prescription black label drugs that are no longer allowed to be given to kids because they suppress the breathing. She was given codeine and phenagrin. Okay. So, errors from medical personnel is what was her demise. But then they attack and accuse a man who grew up really poor, didn't have any resources, lives down in Palestine, Texas, really comes from really humble.
Yeah, I know. I'm very close there. Very, very near
Yeah.
there.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, he was just doomed from the start. He had a public defender that just didn't defend. He didn't call any experts in the trial. He didn't even try to. He basically just said, "Oh yeah, this is a shaken baby case." So now where we sit is Robert and I have become like brothers. I visit him twice a month down on D row. I just saw him this Tuesday. I was down there seeing him. He calls me about 4 times a week, and we call each other brother. I mean, we're like brothers, He's turning 60 this year. He's been on Texas DR for 24 years. He's had 3 stays. They've tried 3 times to unalive this man. So right now where the case sits is there have been written arguments. The Attorney General filed their arguments. Robert's attorneys filed their arguments. And Anderson County, a judge actually over from Tyler, district court judge, has these written arguments, and he has to decide whether Robert gets an evidentiary hearing and or new trial, right? And then whatever he decides, that ruling has to go up to the Texas Criminal Court of Appeals, our highest court in Texas. There's 9 judges on there, okay? So last year when Robert got his stay, it was 5-4, okay? 5 judges voted for Robert to get a stay. You guys heard the guy interviewing me on that podcast? Mm-hmm. The guy who's interviewing me on that podcast is Andrew Rourke. He's a dear, good friend of mine. He was my co-host for the first season of our podcast. Andrew Rourke is a Texas man who was also falsely accused of shaken baby syndrome.
Oh, wow.
And he spent 13 years in Texas prison on a 35-year sentence. And he was exonerated, declared innocent from Texas's junk science bill, the junk science writ that they passed. All right. So he got a new, they were going to give him a new trial, and in Dallas County backed off, said, we don't have any evidence. And they just conceded. And
So
he was finally exonerated.
why can't Robert get the junk science? Well, what's the problem with that? Why are they pushing back so hard with him?
That's where the fight now lies, Ray. That's where we're at with this. We're saying, hey, look.
My question though, in your opinion, why do you think that the Attorney General is having such pushback with his case versus other cases?
Yeah, well, because there's a couple things here. It's very political. It's very political in Texas. In Texas. In Texas, men get elected in Texas for it's like notches on their belt. Hey, it's no accident that we have 5 executions scheduled for the end of this year.
Yeah.
No accident. It's election season, right? Mm-hmm. So it's all political. It's sick. Okay. I've gotten phone calls from powerful men in this state that that control a lot of things. I'll just say that. And they've told me, like, hey, nothing can be done for Robert during the election. You got to wait. And I'm just like, are you
So
kidding? Are you kidding me,
last,
man? You're making this political? A
it's
man's life, you
just
know?
last year I did a live about Robert and I made a video.
Hmm.
And after I did that live and made that video, I got so many messages saying you probably shouldn't talk about that. This is a big deal in Texas. I was like, yeah, it is a big deal. And but I
Hmm.
kind of did back off because I felt kind of a little threatened a little bit, and I'm so
Oh,
close
yeah.
to the county that he's from
Oh,
that I kind
yeah.
of just, and so I didn't. But yeah,
Let me,
it's so
yeah.
much bullshit. It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
right, and it should be uncovered. It should be exposed for what
Yeah.
it is.
Ray, I've received many threats, many, many, many. I get them all the time. I get them all the time. I get D threats all the time.
It's
And
crazy.
I've spoken out very publicly and very pointed towards our current attorney general. And I've received texts from people that I guess I would call them kingmakers. They're the kinds of guys that have a lot of money and they're able to
Make things
help
happen.
make things happen, get certain people into office, have certain people on speed dial on their phones. And
Yep.
I've been told, hey, don't poke the bear at the zoo right now. This ain't gonna
That's
help,
not a
you
good
know.
time. Yeah.
And you know, when that happens, I'm a God fearing man, and I just let them know right out of the chutes, like, you're not gonna stop. I'm gonna speak truth, and I'm gonna shout it from the rooftops as long as people will hear and
That's how I
listen.
feel too.
You know, do what you will with me, but it freaks my wife out a little bit. And you know, I am a person who just wants to live a peaceful life, but when I see an injustice, I'm not going to be quiet.
That's how I feel.
um,
I'm the same way.
this country wasn't founded that way, and we,
Exactly.
we need to remember that. We need to remember the foundations of what started this place, this great place, right? And why we are who we are. And we are supposed to be a beacon of truth and light and justice for
Yeah.
all. And that means that if we get it wrong, we admit our mistake. And how hard is that? And I've talked to these men in power and I've said, you weren't even in office when this happened. How hard is it to say, hey, Texas made a mistake back here 24 years ago. We're going to right a wrong. It actually gives you credibility. People respect that, right? But yeah, we're getting all this pushback. It's political. And it's terrifying too, because two of the five judges that voted for Robert are coming off the bench, and they know that in this election cycle. They know that they want to run the clock out and get new judges on the panel. So we know that it sits in the district court now. The chances of it getting up to the criminal court of appeals and them reading it and ruling on it before election season is slim to nil. Nothing happens that fast. When you guys know, the wheels of justice churn very slowly. So I'm terrified for Robert. I just, even with everything we have pointing towards us, I'm like, this is Texas. Texas doesn't give a rip. You know, I know. Listen, if you question, I'm not here to debate hard hitting things like the DP today, the D penalty. I'm not here to debate that, okay? But what I will say to you as an exonerated man is over 200 people have been exonerated off of D row. What does that tell you? Over 200
They
people
don't
have been
always get it
exonerated.
right.
They don't. And we know they've unalived innocent people. We know it. We know for fact, because some people have been exonerated after
After the fact.
it's too late, you know? So, yeah, it's a flawed system. And I look at, you know, we're flawed human beings, right? So when I look at who we are as a society and humans, I just don't think that we have the, I don't think that we can responsibly administer it. It's been proven that we can't. So, and then there's the money side of it. When you really look at the facts, it costs three times the amount. If you gave a person a life sentence without parole in Texas, putting him on Texas D row costs 3 times the amount. 3 times. So it's actually more expensive just from a
Do you
taxpayer's
know why that is, though?
perspective. Yeah, it's because rightfully so. It's because of all the
Appeals
all
and such.
all the appeals and stuff that they're afforded. If you're on a capital case and you're on Texas D row, now you're afforded a lot more legal avenues that they have to step through before they can, and that takes time and that takes money and resources and everything, right?
Have you ever looked into where the actual rugs come from that they use for the execution?
Yes, I have.
It's like
Though
literally insane.
it is insane, and I think it would be really interesting, Ray, to I was saying this the other day. I did a live driving home from DR and from seeing Robert, and I think it would be really interesting. And I know the government never wants this to happen, but I would like an autopsy done on somebody after they've been given an injection, and because I think it would tell a story. Science always tells a story. And I think
Absolutely.
it would tell a story of a man or a woman who didn't go peacefully, that suffocated, that I think it would tell a really violent story.
Yeah,
I do.
I have to agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Because not only that, but so many of those rugs are even expired because they're purchased from the black market.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
they're
Yeah.
paid. They cost astronomical amounts of money.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah, and they've used expired stuff, and then they end up being botched. I mean, all the botched ones that there's plenty of data out there that shows all the
Yes,
botched.
ma'am.
You know, Tennessee right now, Tennessee is like they don't know what to do because of the last botched one. They're just like they're in limbo, and it's kind of like, well, I'm kind of like, well, good, hold off. You guys need to take a
There's an
good
innocent man
hard
there
look.
right now that we've been
There is.
advocating.
Gary Wayne Sutton, absolutely.
Yes.
I've been reading his transcripts. I know, for sure. Gary, man, I pray for him every day. I pray for all of these men. You know, as a Christian, I had to come to terms with this because before all this happened to me, I had a pretty naive view of the justice system, and I didn't know what I know now. Yeah, right. I just thought that if somebody was in court and they were facing a judge and jury, they probably, they're probably guilty. They're here. They did something, right?
Yeah.
Now I question everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have to. I go to the Innocence Network conference every year. And this April I was there, and there was about 300 some exonerees there in attendance, which represents a very small amount nationally that actually show up. But you look around the room, and they, on a Friday night, they have every exonerated person in attendance. They put your picture up, how many years you did, and they have you come up front, and all the exonerees are up there, and we're all high-fiving. It's a celebration. We're all home, right? It's a beautiful time. But then at the end of that, what's that?
How often do they do that?
They do it every year. It's incredible, guys.
Where do they do it at?
Different city every year. This year it was in Chicago. Year before that it was Seattle. Next year it's in Anaheim, California. It's a different city every year. It's an incredible conference. Anybody can attend, and it's a 3-day conference. Attorneys, advocacy groups show up, exonerated folks are there. And it's an amazing time. They have all these breakout sessions, and you learn so much at these conferences, and you meet a community of people that are all fighting for justice. It's pretty incredible. I mean, Seattle was my first one 2 years ago. So Chicago this year was my second. April of every year. It's usually like right after or right before Easter, depending on where Easter falls. But yeah, it's incredible. But at the end of this year, it was that Friday night, everybody crossed the stage and we're all celebrating. But then what they do is they put up all the years total of the 300 some people there. They put up all the years added up. that were stolen from everybody up on that stage. And this year you looked up and it said 6,582 years.
I got chills.
And you look at that and it's like there's this somber moment, and then you think this represents a real small amount of people.
Yeah.
And then you think, how many more? How many more are still waiting? And that is why I can't be silent. I can't.
I know.
I can't do
That's
it.
how I feel with it.
I can't turn my face away. You know, when you know that, you can, right? It's hard because my family is so excuse me, this chokes me up a little bit, but
Me too, man. It's okay.
my family sometimes are like, hey, what, you know, you're too involved, you're too involved. You gotta back off. And I have a little bit, I've had to, right? I gotta listen sometimes. My wife will say, man, you're helping so many people right now that we're not seeing you. And I'm like, oh man, I'm blowing it at home, so it's always this tricky balance. But when somebody calls me and a family calls me and they're in crisis and they need help and they're right in the middle of maybe what we went through, the least I can do is point them to the resources I have, right? I can make some phone calls, and I have people in my phone that their attorneys need, right? Stuff like that. So I gotta do it. It's like if I can help them and get them the best resources, So yeah, that's tough. So I've had to pull away from some of that, or not pull away, but just have guardrails and some boundaries set up with it, because it can get all consuming too.
It absolutely can.
You know what I mean? So that can get tough, but you have to just have that proper. So I'm always bucking up against those guardrails sometimes, like, oh man, here I go again. I gotta, and my wife's really helpful with that. And you know what? She's very patient. She'll just say, hey, you're doing it again, and oh man, I'm, okay, let me, so, all right, I'll say, all right, I gotta, we've been married 20 years and she's my true north. You know what I mean? She keeps me, you know what I mean?
Well,
She keeps me.
I've seen a
Yes.
couple of questions asking how your daughter's doing now.
She's great. My daughter is 12, 12 years old, going through the preteen life.
Yeah, I have a
I've
12-year-old
gone,
as well.
man, I'll tell you guys what, here's the best news. She's healthy and strong. She's made a full recovery from what was birth trauma, but we're going through that preteen time. I've gone from the guy who hung the moon. I've gone from daddy to dad. Don't hug me in front of my friends. You got to be real thick skinned because I'm a teddy bear, right? Like, drop me off over there. I'm like, what? Like, whoa. Who are you talking
My
to here?
son, he told my husband, don't come out on the porch when the bus comes anymore.
Yeah, right. It's like, what? We were best buds for like 11 years. So I'm told that I'm going to get her back at some point. Like, she'll be back, but I just have to ride this out. But what I'm learning though, too, just with everything I'm involved with, is I got to be engaged. Like right now in her life, it's like I carve out every Saturday morning. I take her to breakfast. We have a dad-daughter date, right? I take her to breakfast. She usually wants to go to Cracker Barrel and we go there. And I think she wants to go to Cracker Barrel because of the gift shop after, because I'm a sucker. I'm always going to buy her something, right? But so we end up there, and then we go to Hobby Lobby and we pick up a craft. Like, we built a birdhouse a few weeks back and painted it. So we spend like the morning all the way up to lunch together. We spend a good 6 hours together, and I just check in with her. Hey, how was your week? What's going on with you? Because I want her to always be able to come to dad. I want to make sure that I'm approachable and that she knows that I'm always there. So it's like, so she's doing great. She's just going through the preteen thing, and my wife's good. My wife was a registered nurse when all this happened. She hasn't practiced since, but that's been by choice. She wants to stay home. We homeschool our daughter, and she's like in a homeschool co-op out here and everything, and involved in a lot of activities outside the home. But we homeschool, and so my wife's full-time mom, full-time wife, plus full-time teacher. So she's got the toughest job in the world, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I work for an airline here training pilots in the simulator. I love it. I miss, you know, I could try to get after. This was tricky because I got fired from the airline I was flying for after all this happened because I was a convicted felon. They fired me. And, you know, it took years to get that cleaned up and off my record. But I was able to get back into my career as a pilot instructor. Probably about 3 years after this happened, I was able to get back into my career. But it was always a carpet dance. I'd go in and do an interview, and they would look at my credentials. They'd look at my experience and say, wow, this is great. You know, yeah, we want to hire you. And I'd be like, hey, there is one thing. And I'd have to say, hey, this is something that happened to me. And literally the attorneys at the Michigan Innocence Clinic would be ready for their call. But I had, you know, airlines actually go through that process with me and hire me. And the airline that hired me in Texas, they hired me before I was exonerated in a security sensitive job. And they could see from the attorneys and the records and everything, they were like, this is nonsense. And they hired me. So I can't say what airline I work for, but I'll just tell you, they have my loyalty for life, because they hired me before I was exonerated, and they gave me a chance to be back in my career field. And I love training guys and mentoring pilots that are just starting at the airline. Also, I train guys that are coming from the first officer seat over the captain seat. I was a captain for years, so mentoring a new captain who's now going to be in command of everything and just teaching him like what he needs to know. And it's really rewarding. It's awesome. And, you know, you kind of use a barometer, like if would I put my wife and daughter in the back of this guy's airplane? And if I can say yes, then let's send him out. We'll train him up and get him going. But if that's ever in question, it's like, we have the public's trust, right? We're going to be flying all the public around. So it's incredible to help be a gatekeeper for that and build good, safe pilots. I love it. It's really rewarding. But so I do that full time, plus, you know, my advocacy for Robert and others. And in that podcast season I just did, I had no idea what I was getting into there. Yeah. If you ever drop a weekly podcast episode and you don't have an editor and a team, be prepared. It's about a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
So
I'm
between
getting
that and
ready
my
to do
job,
that.
you know, just be ready. Yeah. So, yep. So everybody's has been asking me, hey, when's season 2? And I said, not for a bit. If I ever do a season 2, I'm hiring a college intern to come in and edit, and I'm going to need to fund that. So,
Right.
so, yeah, yep, yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where things sit now. I'm just helping in Robert's case. We're trying to move on with our lives, but there's some fallout from it. There's some trauma from it. When I got out, I was diagnosed with PTSD, and you know, when I got home, I started having night terrors. You don't even, you know, compared to a lot of guys, I didn't spend a lot of time incarcerated, but even a year will do it to you. When I got home, I started, you know, and it's weird because when you're inside, you have to keep your guard up, and there's a couple sets of rules that you have to follow, right? You got to follow the rules that the state has in that facility, but then you got the rules of the inmates too, like keep yourself safe, right? So I didn't realize that I had my guard up so much that I wasn't like feeling things. And then I get home and I'm asleep in my bed and I wake up in a night terror, forgetting where I am. It would go from like being in the back of the ambulance with my daughter, then to, I'm in this jail cell, and then it would be 30 seconds of trying to figure out where I was, screaming and flailing, and my wife is just like, whoa, what's with this guy? So I got diagnosed. They put me on some medications. That helped with the night terrors. But the medications had horrific side effects that I hated. And I started to eventually be able to get dosed way down. They put me on a really high dose to begin with. And now I'm on like the smallest dose, like 20 milligrams of something. And every time I try to quit that, my wife's like, did you take your medicine? You've got an edge. You got an edge to you that's not fun. I'm like, oh, like I said, she's my true north. She knows. So every time I try to quit, it's like, no. Just take your meds. Take your meds, mister. So with that medication, I still have all my pilot's licenses, but to be medically cleared to actually fly is a different story. But God has me home, and I love being home. I love driving home every night after the simulator training. I'm home and I'm present. I'm home all day long. I work the night shift because I can be here. Since my wife and daughter are homeschooling, we can eat lunch together, breakfast together, dinner before I leave, and then I just miss a couple hours before bedtime is all. So I get to be home all day with my family and then go to work. It's a dream job, It's great. So I don't really want to pack that roller bag and go crisscross the country. I did that for years and it was fun, but being home's where it's at for me. So I'm not really wanting to jump through the hoops to pursue it. I don't know. And I just turned 50 this year, so I could, airline pilots can fly till 65, so I could still do 15 years, but I'd have to start over seniority wise. So I don't want to do all that. I like what I'm doing, So yeah, but yep.
I'm so thankful you came and talked to us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, thank you. I see in the comments that you're on the Robertson team. Check out his case, guys. He's we are always in a fight in Texas, and everywhere that somebody's on D row, it's a fight. Yeah. It's a fight, and
I've always believed he was innocent.
Yeah. He's guys. If you ever talk to this man, I go down there and I thought, like, I'm going to go down and encourage this guy, right? It's the other way. I go down there and I feel like I'm in a men's Bible study. He brings his, whatever he's been reading that week. He brings like his message written down on paper, and he's like, I got something to share with you. I was reading in Psalms, and here's what the commentary says about it, and here's what God promises us from this. And he's so intentional. I mean, talk about he is so steeped in scripture. He's doing his time. He's chosen to do his time so well that I can call Robert with a big problem and say, hey man, this is what's going on in my life. Hey, look at that. That's awesome. This is what's going on in my life. And, I'm not sure what to do here, Robert. He'll listen. And then the next call, he'll be like, hey, I was thinking about what you said, and here's what I think. And he'll give you really godly counsel. And I'll go to my pastor, and my pastor's like, dude, he's spot on. This guy's incredible. So it's just like, look at how, we don't realize these men, even the ones in there that have committed a crime, they do change. They're redeemable. They I'm not condoning what men do or women do to get on D row. I'm not saying that, yes, if somebody unalives somebody, they're going to have to, face some consequences and incarceration, all those things. But I just don't think it's up to us to decide who's redeemable or not. That's to the Lord. That's God's work. And I think scripture's pretty clear about that's his work. So that's where I kind of draw the line, that man.
Yeah.
And so he's amazing, an amazing guy. We carefully talk about the future. We always say, Lord willing, Lord willing, when you come home, he tells me, he says, I love my hometown. He said, but I'm never going back.
I don't blame him, because the amount of people who messaged me from there after I made a video about him, ain't no way in hell I would ever go back there.
Yeah. Yep. So I have a guest house on my property, and I said, Robert, Lord willing, you come home, you can get on your feet here. He's turning 60 in November. he's turning 60. You know what I mean? He's just, that's really sad, like to see him growing old in there. He lost his mom in 2021 while he was there. He lost his dad before that. You're losing loved ones. Life's going by and you're stuck, you know? So,
Yeah, that's true.
yep, it's tough. Yeah. Yep. But yeah, I just appreciate everybody. Appreciate you looking into his case. Unshaken Truth, our podcast. I mean, we really deep dived it this year. We interviewed the leading detective, Brian Wharton, has done a complete 180. He's saying, look at that. I love that one. Look at that. I always like to do the mustache thing. He's saying, hey, had we known Robert had autism, he said it all makes sense. And what he knows now about the science. Here's the thing about shaken baby syndrome that folks don't understand. And here's why it's so controversial. Okay. First off, absolutely, you should never, right? You should never do that to a baby. If anyone does that to a baby, they got problems and they need to be prosecuted. Absolutely. But here's the issue that we have is the American Academy of Pediatrics and this child abuse pediatrician subspecialty. They try to say that all they need is one piece of a triad that they call. The triad is retinal hemorrhages, that's bleeding behind the eyes, subdural hematomas in the head, and in brain swelling, right? So, but the problem is this: if you actually shake a baby, the forces applied. They've done this in biomechanical engineering labs. Biomechanical engineers make our vehicles safe, right? They do tests on car seats for our kids. They do tests on seat belts. Their testing and their science is pretty spot on. And they've done testing and they've proven that the forces that have to be applied to a baby to actually shake them like that, you're always going to have neck trauma. You're going to have neck trauma from the whiplash. You would be holding that.
Possibly even a snapped neck.
Yeah, snapped, broken ribs. You'd have to hold that baby. It's horrific to even think about. You'd have to hold that baby so tightly, right? So that's the issue is when medical findings come back and it's like just one of those things, that's a problem because there's so many medical diagnoses and things that can contribute to retinal hemorrhaging or subdural hematomas, all that stuff. And they have tunnel vision and they kind of have this, they'll argue, hey, we're protecting kids. Basically, we're protecting kids. Shut up. And it's like, but wait a minute. Are you protecting kids? If you misdiagnose a child who's sick, is that protecting them? That's a delay in medical care is what that is. That's not protecting a kid. So, man, not good. That's how people get railroaded, because then, law enforcement and CPS, they're like, well, this doctor says, when a doctor says something, it's like, there's no turning back from that. And so these child abuse pediatricians will not concede. They won't come to the table and acknowledge any of the new science or findings. They gaslight and they just say, no, we're sticking with our narrative and we won't look at anything. And that's not reasonable. That's not good science. It's not good medicine. Doctors take a Hippocratic oath to first do no harm, right? So we expect that from our kid, that when we bring our kiddos in, that they're gonna do their jobs and they're gonna properly diagnose and follow a differential diagnosis path. If you or I went to the doctor or the emergency room, the doctor would run tons of tests and they try to poke holes in their own theories, right? They're going to try to find out what's wrong with you. That's called science. That's called good medicine. So we expect that. And for us, we are all about, in the groups that I work with, of course, we're all about protecting kids and protecting children, but we're also about, we just as fiercely want to protect the innocent, right? That's what our founding fathers wrote the Bill of Rights for. They spent in a huge amount of time on our Bill of Rights for that, for due process, the rights of a fair trial, all those things. So we just want we think everybody should be defended fiercely, the same. So, we talked to Brian Wharton. We talked to 3 different Texas legislators from both sides of the aisle. That's the incredible thing about Robert. Over half of our legislators, Democrats and Republicans down in Austin, are all saying the same thing about Robert. This man needs a new trial. All the evidence has to be heard. We had Brian Harrison on our program, and he is a staunch supporter of the DP. But he said, look, with Robert's case, due process has been violated. And he said, I will be damned if I'm going to let my children inherit a Texas. He said, I have 3 small kids. And he said, I'll be damned if I'm going to let them inherit a state where we're okay with executing innocent people. No, we can't do this. If I'm going to support this thing, me more than anyone has to shout from the rooftops and say, look, if we can't give this man due process, then I can't support it anymore. We got Brian Harrison saying that. He's a staunch conservative, right? And with real conservative values. And even Brian is saying, like, he's pumping the brakes, We had Lacey Hull on, Joe Moody from the other side of the aisle. So John Grisham was our first guest. He's writing a book about Robert right now, a true story book about Robert. So we had him on. It was interesting to talk to him. He's been really involved he's a board member on the Innocence Project. So he's incredible, So yeah, it was a good season. It was rewarding, but it was a lot of hard work. But yeah, if you want to learn more about Robert's case, you can listen to our podcast. Also, Dateline NBC did a podcast on Robert.
I think I've watched everything I could watch and read on that case.
Yeah. So the Dateline one, it's a 4-part podcast, guys, really worth listening to. And they're short episodes. So it's an easy listen. It's called The Last Appeal. Lester Holt narrated it. And my co-host, Andrew Rourke, and I are in episode 4. They interviewed us with Lester and talked to us about our cases. It's incredible because Andrew's case, the last stay that Robert got, is based completely on Andrew's case. And it's, the Criminal Court of Appeals said based on ex parte Rourke, that's Andrew's last name, Robert Robertson deserves a stay of execution. And we need to look and see whether or not his case, because of the Rourke case, warrants an evidentiary hearing and or new trial. So, I mean, Andrew's case and his exoneration is creating case law in Texas. It should, exactly. So, but the Attorney General is still fighting that tooth and nail. They've tried to flip the narrative now and say this wasn't a shaken baby case because they're getting defeated with the shaken baby science and everything. And they're trying to say it's not a shaken baby case. Well, I've got all the trial transcripts. Shaken baby's mentioned over 200 times in the trial transcripts. That doesn't hold water. That dog don't hunt, So they're trying to say now that he beat his daughter to
yeah. So now they're trying to switch it up that it wasn't shaken baby. Now it's the give me a break.
It's terrible, guys. It's terrible. So that's how tightly they want to hold on to this. They don't want to admit they're wrong. It's the money too. They don't want to pay because if they have to pay Robert, they're going to have to pay. It's 24 years. I've told Robert that. I said, Robert, when you come home, you need to get a financial planner. Because you're not going to have to work unless you want to, but you're going to need to get a trust, a financial planner, because you know what, you're going to have relatives coming out of the woodwork that you haven't seen for years.
Yeah.
What I mean?
Out in Palestine talking shit about it.
Yeah, and then they're going to want to be his best friend again, right? So he's going to need protection. He's going to need people that have good intentions with him that aren't, you know what I mean? It's like, I'll tell you, since my exoneration, I was approached by 3 different law firms and that said, hey, we can sue the hospital in Michigan. We can sue the doctor. We can do all this stuff, right? But the problem is every time they would come back and they would want to settle, and these settlement offers were tempting. I mean, very tempting. but I would have to sign an NDA. And what the hospital wants from me is they never want me to speak again.
Mm-mm.
You're not ever allowed to mention your case publicly ever again. And I said, well, how do I, no, I have parents that call me and email me. What do I tell them? Sorry, I took some money. I can't help you today. That's the devil's money, man. I can't take that money.
No kidding.
The airline I'm flying for, they pay me pretty good. We're doing okay. We're going to be all right. So I'm not going to take money
They'll probably do the same thing to Robert, though. They'll probably try to do that to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they will. If they concede, there's so many different things, right? The state could try to come back and just say, okay, well, we're going to let him out with time served. Well, that's not good enough. I mean, we'll take it to start. Absolutely, we would take that as a start, but then we'd be fighting for his exoneration after he's out. If that saves the man and gets him home, of course we would take that, but the work's just starting then, because we're going to get him fully exonerated because we know he's innocent, right? But they might try starting somewhere like that, or even less. They might be, well, okay, we'll take him off D row and he can serve out a life sentence. We would still be fighting,
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Thank you so much for coming up.
Yeah. Thank you.
Does anybody in the chat have a question that he didn't answer already?
Yeah, I know I might have missed some. Sorry, guys.
Thorough, though.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all for listening today, and
yeah,
right, for sure. And that's the reason that's the reason I tell my story still. It's because I know that my story dovetails into Robert's story. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's really why I want to tell it, is because I want people to know about Robert.
Can you give us the name of the podcast?
Yeah, it's called Unshaken Truth. If you go to www.unshakentruth.com, that's our website. And in the upper right corner, you can listen to it on Apple or Spotify, or we have a YouTube channel where you can watch the video and audio of our podcasts. If you go to unshakentruth.com, upper right corner, you can just click on our YouTube logo there, and it takes you right to our YouTube channel, and you can subscribe there. Or if you're in your car, you can listen on Spotify or Apple. Just type in Unshaken Truth. So that's how you can listen. But yeah.
I'm so glad you came and told us your story. Yeah. It happens to so many people.
Thank you for having me.
In many different ways.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ray, for having me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that you were reading Gary Wayne's files also.
Yeah, I am. And I've talked to some of his supporters, and there's somebody currently doing a podcast, and it seems like she's doing a great job, so because a couple of them were like, a couple of them said, hey, will you do a podcast on Gary? And I was like, well, someone's doing it, so I'm not going to she's doing a good job. I'm not going to, if another podcaster's worked that hard, I'm not going to mess with that. She's got it, but I'll help in any way I can, any way I can, I'll help. It's tough in these cases.
Absolutely it is.
Every single podcast episode, I was so careful. I ran it through legal vetting every time, because I never wanted, you never know what could be said that they're going to use. You know what I mean? To try and hurt this man. You have to be so careful. That was a whole new set of, like, every episode I would have to send out and get vetted. Like, all right, is this good? Are we good here? But you have to do your due diligence, because it's a man's life's on the line, literally. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, y'all have a great day, and thanks for having me.
Josh.
Yeah. Appreciate y'all. And we'll be in touch. Thanks, Ray. All right.
Have a good one.
Stay cool in this Texas heat.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I wasn't expecting him to speak about Robert Robertson at all. I was not expecting that at all. Yes, absolutely was. Josh only served 1 year, but he went through pure hell. He did get exonerated. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and hop off for now because we got a lot to do today, and I will clip that and post it to my YT, and I'll post it to TikTok, so you guys will have that to go back on it and look at. And I'm gonna come back on tonight. I think, as far as I know, I'll be on tonight. Okay, I'll see you guys in a little while. Y'all have a good day, and thanks for hanging out.